Everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we are back in War Thunder looking at the Chinese tech tree. We're going to be having a look at the air vehicles of rank 3 now, just basically because I've spaded them and also because I'm now moving on to rank 4, as you can see with some of the aircraft available. Rank 3 is kind of small for the Chinese, and another thing is that there is a few jumps in it when it comes to changing from rank 3 to rank 4. So let's say if you've been playing the I-16 Type 17, then you jump to 6-0 to the LA-9, and then stuff like the Mosquito FB Mk, jumping to 5-3 to the IL-10 in rank 4. You also have to research pretty much all of these vehicles in order to move on to rank 4, so you will get a little bit of experience of all of them, and I think that's generally a good idea when it comes to War Thunder. Moving on, let's start off with the P-47D. So the P-47D-28, it's an exact copy of the American one that we have in the game, apart from the fact that you obviously have different options when it comes to lineups. The nice thing about 4-7 in the Chinese tech tree is what you have in the ground aspect is not very heavy. Instead, what you have are ground lineups of 5-3 and 5-7. Those are your bread and butter when it comes to dealing with these lineups. You have two, I suppose, mega lineups. You have the 3.7 area, then you have the 5.3 area, and then the 5.7 on top of it with the T-3485s and the IS-2, which in my opinion is not the best vehicle. So in order to run with these vehicles, you need CAS elements in ground forces, and you have pretty much a few options. So you can either go with the IL-10. The problem with the IL-10 is that its main guns are not the best when it comes to actually dealing with ground vehicles in ground forces realistic. So instead, you are stuck with these vehicles right here. You have the P-47D-28, the P-51D-20, P-38, and the P-51, and then maybe the P-1Y-1, but we'll get into that in a little bit. And the reasons for this are all very similar. So the P-47D-28, the reason why it's good in ground forces is because it has this secondary load, which is incredibly impressive. You can bring two 1,000-pound bombs along with a bunch of H-fire rockets, but my weapon of choice when it comes to ground forces is this. You get two 1,000-pounders and a 500. This means that you can guarantee 2 kills with the machine on the ground, and then you can use the 850 cals either to dogfight in the air or be able to kill lightly armored vehicles on the top, or even some heavier vehicles. The good thing about the 50 cals from the American/Chinese vehicles is you can see that if you take the right build, they pen up to 26mm, which will go through stuff like tops of Panzer IVs. There are areas of Panzer IVs which you can pen, which make it very, very easy to be able to kill them. Let's look at the Panzer IV-G, for example. If you have a look here, it's 11mm and 10mm on these areas. So if you come from straight above, you can easily just penetrate all of these areas and just annihilate these vehicles. And that's at a very similar BR. If you want to go a little bit higher, let's say 4.3, if you are in that area, once again, 12mm worth of armor. It's nothing to write home about on these machines. So the 50 cals are not just dangerous against aircraft, they're also very dangerous against ground vehicles. So the P-47 in that case is a great CAS element that you can bring along to the battle. If I was going to be honest, though, once you start researching other vehicles, such as the P-51D and the P-51K, these are better CAS elements if you want to do a slightly different way of playing ground realistic. What I mean by this is you get slightly less on the ground forces part, so you're able to at least nuke one target, or if you're really good with bazookas, I suppose 3. But the main thing is you are better in the air superiority role, and because around this BR you get a lot of BF-109s, you get a lot of zeros, sometimes that helps, but the P-47D is much more akin to a proper CAS vehicle. And if you look in the tree, the Chinese tree, it's the first one that you really get. It's the first one which can properly multi-roll. You know, the P-66 kind of can, the CW-21 kind of can, but that's because of its guns. The P-47 with the secondary armaments can play that multi-roll really well. So from a ground realistic point of view, it's great. Now let's talk about air realistic. So air realistic, it's one of those vehicles which can sometimes be left out to dry because of the fact that of what it faces. At 4.7, you have, as China, a really strong chance to face the Japanese. And this is just something which they've obviously tried to set up in the matchmaker, and it does mean that you pretty much get either China, Soviets versus Japan, or you get a weird mix of countries. So we're going to focus on the main, the main matchups that you actually get. And at 4.7, the Japanese are incredibly strong. You have the A6M5 Co, which is one of the best premiums in the game, bang for your buck when that's on discount. So you have a lot of people flying that to grind through all of these wonderful Japanese vehicles. You have stuff such as the A6M5s, the Otsu, of course, still crazy expensive, still crazy good. And then you have the A6M3s as well that people will be grinding through. And then stuff like the A7M2 on the higher end that you will face. That's not even including the Key 61s, which the majority are good, apart from a single one, which is, of course, this one here, the Key 61 high-end, just because it's heavy. It doesn't feel as nice as the other vehicles that are around it. And if you get up-tiered, well, you're going up against some absolute monsters in the forms of the N1Ks and the Key 84s. So at your BR for the Chinese at 4.7, just if you face Japan, you're coming up against some really strong opposition. You're coming up against Zeros and Key 61s, which turn well, but don't have the necessary top speed and high altitude performance that your P-47 has. So therefore, if you engage them in this turn fighting area, or if you engage them early on in a battle, when they're going to be higher than you, or when they're going to be on the same altitude as you, you're going to struggle in the P-47, because they are going to be able to outdo you in every way. So what you have to do is have a little bit of patience with the P-47D-28. You've got to get a little bit more altitude than the Japanese, and then you've got to come down and you've got to boom and zoom. And the problem with this whole scenario is you need patience. And patience is really hard to come by in War Thunder when you see your whole team dying. And it's just one of those things where you just don't want to get involved. You want to get involved as fast as you can, because you want to try and save your teammates. And sometimes you have to make risk-reward thoughts in your head. If that person dies there, what does it create? Do I have to save them? Is it going to be worth it? All of these things with the P-47. But if you can get to that high altitude, if you can, get guns, basically rocking on these Zeros, and you come up against pilots which don't know how to defensively fly, then you're going to do really well. If you come up against pilots flying the Zeros who know how to defensively fly and are looking at you, then you're going to have a troubling time, because the Zero just overall is able to probably defensively fly as one of the best vehicles in the game. So getting guns on targets in the P-47 is going to be hard to do. Overall, though, it is still a challenging experience. It is still a fun experience. It's just one of those ones where I would say you are about the 40% out of the 60% against the Japanese planes. At high altitude, you win every time, or at least you should do. In head-on engagements, you win every time, or at least should do. But when it comes to the general aspects of the game and the meta of how people play it, you are definitely at a disadvantage compared to the people that you're facing. Just because a lot of people want to fight within that first 5 to 10 minute period, and if they do that, you're going to lose the majority of your team to Zeros who do really well in that period. If you're facing Germans, it's a slightly different story, because you'll be mainly facing Bf-109s and Focke-Wulfs. They can climb with you, but they don't turn as well. but at the same time they do have a better dive than the Zero, so you have to be a little bit more careful when you're on the zoom aspect of you're getting away from them, but the playstyle is the same. Overall, the P-47D-28 I think is a wonderful aircraft because it does teach people the value of booming and zooming at high altitudes going down, but more importantly, it's the first proper CAS plane that you get in this lineup. The next vehicle is the complete opposite. You have the I-16 Type 17, and I just can't stand this vehicle. I played through it in the Soviet tree, and now I've had to play through it again in the Chinese tech tree. I think it's way too over-tiered at 2.7. I understand why it's 2.7, basically because it's guns, but when it comes to general performance, it's absolutely awful, and it's so easy to outplay an I-16, and I'm feeling a lot of people maybe get tangled up with it, kind of like how they do with Zeros, and that's maybe why they're struggling with it. But the main thing is, imagine if you take a plane like an I-16, so like one of these little boys here, you take this one, the Type 10, you take away its floatiness, you take away its ability to turn as well as it does, and you replace it with Shivaks. That's pretty much what you get out of the I-16 Type 17. It feels horribly balanced when you're flying it, meaning that it wants to turn over all the time, and also the engine power just isn't enough to compensate for the 2 Shivaks that you're given. So overall for me, I really just don't like this aircraft in realistic. I mean, the Zeros outturn you. You lose way too much speed in the turn, so you only have like maybe 1 or 2 good turns, and you're at incredibly low speeds, and you are just bait for whatever wants to take you on. Your rate of climb isn't fast enough, and I suppose the only thing you have going for you is the fact that you're small, so you're hard to hit, which has never been a good argument, especially against people who are accurate at shooting. So the other thing is that it does get some access to secondary weapons, so you can bring it in as a CAS element at 2.7, but as we talked about, the 2 main lineups that the Chinese have are 5.3/5.7, 3.7, and then if you want to go down, I suppose 2.3 as well, with the M3A3 Stuart, the M5A1, and the LVTA4. So if you run the 2-3 lineup, which is the closest to the I-16, then you're in a scenario where you're up-tiering the whole lineup for an I-16 Type 17. And this I-16 is good in the ground realistic air superiority role, basically because it can just hunt down people who are low and slow because they have a bunch of bombs on them, or they're bringing in attackers and stuff like that. But it's not good enough to have to up-tier a whole lineup in it, because of the fact that you can only really do that air superiority role and nothing else. Also at 2.7, if you want to run that, you have better options. The Key 44-2 high is 2.7. Right, so just take that instead of the Type 17. You have much more flexibility, you have much more speed, and you have pretty much the same secondaries, apart from some rockets, which are incredibly inaccurate. And then you also have the P-40E1 Kitty Hawk with more, CAS options, plus the 50 cals. So there's really no need to take this thing, unless you are trying to, I suppose, grind rank 4, since this is rank 3 and these are rank 2s. But just don't tire yourself with this. Just, research it, and I would actually say this is one of those aircraft that I would personally skip if I wasn't spading all of these vehicles. I would just throw it out and never, see it again. I have never enjoyed this vehicle just because it's supposed to be good at turning. It's supposed to be good at, overall firepower, but I can name a ton of different aircraft at this BR which are just better than it at those things, and it faces them, such as we talked about, the Japanese 2.3, the A6M2N, the N1K1, even the A6M2s, or the Key 44s. Like the Key 44s or the Key 43s, go and use one of them and fight an I-16, and you realize how underpowered this machine is. I would actually drop its BR personally, but I know that won't happen. The next vehicle is the B-25J30. This is a complete copy, I believe, of the American B-25. I'll just make sure to check. Oh no, sorry, that's the J-20, and then we have the J-1. The Soviet one as well. This one is the J-30. Okay, so it's a copy of the Soviet J-30. And what you find with it is, you know, a B-25 experience. You have the 450 cals looking back, including this top turret and the tail. Then you have all of the guns looking forward in the form of the 650 cals, which are incredibly fun to use. And also, with time, I feel like this B-25 has become a little bit heavier to fly. What I mean by this is it takes a little bit more time for when you move the cursor, it actually moves with it. This might be because of the large bomb load that you can carry, the 3 1,000 pounders, but it also might just be maybe I'm playing it slightly differently than I used to. I used to play it in quite an aggressive fighter-bomber role, in a way. You go after the enemy's bombers, but since this is Chinese and not American, you face Japan a lot, and Japan don't really run any bombers at this BR of 4.3. If you're America, and you're facing the Soviets and the Germans a lot, which is what happens, you generally face stuff like the P-8s, the 2s. You also have now the Me-264, which once again, I just want to point out how ridiculous it is. That this machine is 4.3, right? 4.3 with 4,000 kilos of bomb load, which isn't even its top bomb load, but it's the one you should use. 4,000 kilos of 4.3. Turrets up the wazoo, and insane flight performance, very, very good aircraft, and then you've got this at the same BR. The only thing the B-25J does better than it, in terms of bombing, is that I suppose it's slightly faster. And that's it. So, enjoy. With £3,000, you have what? Maybe half? Not even. You don't even have half of the bomb load of the Me-264. But somehow they're the same BR. Who knew? But anyway, yeah, I would use this in a fighter bomber role against stuff like Me-264s, against stuff like P-8s and Year 2s. But since you are Chinese in this one, and you face a lot of Japan, they don't run a lot of bombers. They run a lot of fighters, which climb hard. So that means that you are going to have to use your defensive guns a lot in the B-25 against stuff that we talked about before, Zeros, Key 61s, and the like. In my experiences with the B-25, it's been quite hard, if I'm honest, to try and spade this thing out, mainly because it takes a long time to get into matches. I don't know whether there is something in the matchmaking system which tries to match bombers against bombers, but right now, I can, in the P-47 or the I-16, I can get matches pretty quickly, but for some reason with this P-25, it just takes longer. I've noticed the same thing with the PB4Y and also the P1Y1. So yeah, it definitely seems like there's a little bit of something odd going on. The general bomb load for aerialistic is not great, just because of the base meta that we have right now. It can knock out a base, and that's really about it. It can't do too much else. And because of this, once again, you have a bunch of different bombers that are way more efficient than you. So you have to find other ways to be more efficient. And that is pretty much in a supportive 2-on-1 scenario setup, meaning that you use your B-25 as a piñata to be able to be hit by stuff like A6M5s and also Key 61s, while you hope that your Chinese allies come in and deal with them while you are trying to fight them off. This thing is also very prone to fires, but it's also prone to putting them out. So you can see that all the fuel tanks are self-sealing, which is really nice on it. It does have very good engines on it. It can technically survive on one engine, but it really doesn't like it. So that's something to take into account. Overall, it's a very steady bomber. You know, if we were talking about 2 years ago or 3 years ago, the B-25 would maybe be a top dog at its BR. But unfortunately, with the addition of some German and also some British bombers, it just isn't the case anymore. It's not very good in ground realistic either. just because it's a large target. There's a lot of AA at 4.3. You start running into stuff like whirlwinds and Ostwinds, and the bomb load is about as effective as a P-47. So yeah, there's not really much point to this. The next vehicle is the P1Y1. Now, if we're talking about vehicles which are a bit better in ground realistic, at 4.7, I would run the P1Y1 and the P-47. The P1Y1 gives you that flexibility that you need with a bomber, and also I generally like to run that. So what I do in ground is I run 3 vehicles. It generally is... So let's say I'm running the 5.3 lineup that we talked about. I like to run a main tank, which I'm going to be used, a secondary main tank, and then some kind of support vehicle. So that support vehicle can either be like a tank destroyer, an AA, maybe an artillery, maybe a scout, something like that. So at 5.3, I would be forced to run the M18, the PT-76, and the Type 65, because the ISU-152 and the ISU-122 are garbage. So therefore, I would use this as my main tank. This is the secondary light tank, and then the Type 65 as the supportive element. At 5.7, we got the main tank, the guy, the secondary, the T-34-85, and then maybe once again the Type 65 as the supportive element. Or if I feel like there's a lot of tanks around instead of aircraft, then I bring the M36 motor gun carriage. And therefore, that is how I set up my ground lineup. And on top of that, the air lineup is a fighter, which has CAS capabilities, and then a pure bomber. So if I really need to get into the weeds and destroy stuff. And the P1Y1 can definitely sit in that pure bomber area because of the fact that this P1Y1 is a really nice plane to fly. It has a lot of power in its engines, it actually floats around the air pretty well, and you can pull hard turns with it. The letdown of the P1Y1, though, is its bomb loads. 2 500-kilo bombs. That's it. And also something, when it comes to its modifications, you don't get that bomb load until you get this one right here, the 14 in mod 30. So you need to get to rank 3 modifications before you're able to get 500 kilo bombs. This doesn't even destroy a base. The 800 kilo doesn't even destroy a base. And as I said, with the base meta we have right now, that is incredibly important. So you have to go after stuff like medium tanks to try and sway the battle. But the bomb loads are just so lackluster on the P1Y1 in air realistic. It is, pointless to even talk about it as a useful option. You might as well just take something like a P-47 and you do more damage when it comes to its secondary armaments. The other thing is it does have a really nice torpedo, but because we cannot guarantee getting on a naval map in air realistic, I suppose you could try it with the ban and the dislike function, but I don't personally use it because I want to appreciate all of the different maps in the game. The P1Y1 would be good if you could set it up so it could always use this torpedo, because it's a really good torpedo, but you can't. There's no real way of doing it. So the majority of the time you'll be on Zhengzhou or Chengdu or however you say it, and you'll be sat with these two and you'll be bombing that first column because there's nothing else to get. The 20mm that it has, even though they're at awkward angles, they do a lot of damage. So these 20mm, I run air targets on them. You can run armored targets and maybe kill stuff like light tanks and things, but I much prefer trying to stay alive in this since it has good maneuverability. You can set up really defensively with it, and its fires go out quite a lot, and it does seem to have quite a sturdy structure, so you can normally kill maybe 1 or 2 people with it. The defensive guns, you can see the front one angles down slightly, so if something is coming straight ahead of you, there's not really a lot you can do. So you have to try and point the nose up to try and get hits. That slows you down. That gives them more time to be able to hit you, so it's always better to dive. Then the tail gunner does have a decent set to shoot you. To shoot defensively. The tail gunner is basically the one you're going to, use the most. If you want to kill the P1Y1, it's very simple. You either come in from this angle, so top down like this, or you come in like this and below. You can absolutely annihilate this. But the thing is, because it has really good maneuverability, you can try and get those guns on targets in the most efficient way possible, and normally take out maybe 1 or 2 targets. So it can trade evenly, but against a good pilot, they're going to annihilate you because they're just going to shoot into your cockpits and just take you out. So yeah, the P1Y1 is fun to fly, but if we just look at it from a basic point of view of how good is it when it comes to what its impact on the battle, it has a very small impact on the battle, and it's because of its secondary arms. Now, in ground realistic, 500 kilos with an explosive mass of 200, that could mean 2 targets destroyed on the battlefield. And because you are able to flip it around the place, then you have a situation where you can stay alive. You can't really fight in the air superiority area, but you do have the option to take the 800 if you need to nuke something really quickly in ground realistic. That's why I bring it. I bring it for these 2 options for versatility, because these 2 options are better than the P-47 or the P-51 that I can run. And it's also a lot nicer to handle than the P-25, and in my opinion has much more just because you're able to go a lot faster than the B-25 and able to pull harder, it just makes it a better experience. So yeah, these 2 of 4.7 are the 2 vehicles I use the most in ground realistic, but when it comes to air realistic, the P1Y1 struggles. Now the Mosquito. So the Mosquito FB Mk is just a better version of the British one, and yes, this hurts me, but that's okay, you know, it is how it is. Sometimes you just have to roll with the punches and hope that at some point you get a good, nice Mosquito instead of a fighter bomber version. I would rather have a full bomber version or some form of decent altitude fighter version. The Mosquito FB Mk is one of those ones which unfortunately doesn't fit the game too well. And what I mean by this is heavy fighters, or twin engine fighters, we should call them, I suppose, already struggle in game. They get outturned by monoplanes. Their speed is normally not fast enough at the level that they're at to be able to compensate for this, and also they normally have quite weak ground attack capabilities because of the fact that the guns are more designed to kill planes than they are to kill ground vehicles. The Mk is no different when it comes to the guns. The guns themselves are very much designed to kill stuff such as ground vehicles, but I will say I had a much better experience in this Mosquito than I did when flying the British ones. And I think this is just maybe because nowadays I'm a much better pilot. When I spaded the Mosquitoes, it must have been 3 to 4 to 5 years ago at this point. So my feelings are, you know, I saw situations a lot better with the Mk, but I did use it mainly in a ground pounding role just to get it spaded out, because I knew without these engine upgrades, these ones that you see right here, engine injection, engine, and also cover, which you know, reduces weight and gives you a little bit more max speed, a little bit makes you a little bit tougher as well. You are just mincemeat for 3.7 fighters, and as we talked about with Japan, 3.7 incredibly strong. You have the startings of stuff like the J2M2. You have the Zeros beginning as well to get very dominant. You have the end of the Key 61s in the form of the Key 100. The Germans at 3.7. You have stuff like the Bf109Fs that you'll face a lot. The G2s you won't face as much, but they're still around. And of course the F series of planes. So you have a lot of competition. That's area for, you know, the air superiority factor in air realistic. So for me, the Mosquito doesn't stand up to them. It doesn't have the rate of climb. I feel like if I use it in a pure fighter role, even with an air spawn, it doesn't get up to the heights that it needs to in order to be effective, either against bombers or fighters or attackers. It gets outclimbed and therefore it can't really do anything, apart from try and set up 2-on-1s, which I don't really want to throw away this machine for just 2-on-1s. So using it as a general ground attacker, I think, is how to do it. Go after light targets and aerialistic, use it as a way to be able to get yourself some silver lions, and you can see that the repair cost on it is 8,000, but you should be able to make that back pretty easily. And since this is a better version than the British one, at least you are getting a better version at a similar, or if not the same, BR. Secondary ordnance wise, it does have 2 500-pounders and 8 RP3s. I personally just go for the 2 500-pounders and use it to hit a base, or maybe to hit a medium tank, which is something your guns and your 7.7s cannot deal with. So yeah, you can mop up like 20-25 ground targets with this thing, get a bunch of silver lions. You don't really affect the outcome of the match at all, but, you know, at least you can have some fun and turn your brain off while getting some silver lions and some research. If you actually want to use it properly, then you're going to run into a lot of the problems I just talked about with the twin-engine fighter idea, where you're just going to be in a lot of situations where you are just clearly worse than the people that you're fighting, and there's not a lot you can do about it. Hopefully, at some point, there will be a proper use for these style of twin-engine fighters. Maybe it comes in World War mode, maybe it comes in a different way, but I personally am looking forward to it. But right now, at least with the FB Mark 26, it's in the same boat as its brothers, where it doesn't really have a full place in the game yet. The next vehicle is the PB4Y-2. This is the third time I've had to grind out this plane. It's in the American tech tree, it's in the French tech tree, and now it's in the Chinese tech tree. I will say the Chinese tech tree experience has been better than the French and also the American experience, because I haven't faced as many P-47s and I haven't faced as many Germans. Instead, what I faced is Zeros. And one of the things that the PB4Y is good at is if people sit on your tail and if people don't know where to approach you from, then they are really good at annihilating you. Because as you can see, no matter where you sit on the tail, you will have at least 4 50 cals looking at you from any which direction, apart from below. And since these turrets, they've definitely been changed. They have a way better coverage when it comes to below, especially these ones. They actually look really far down, which is kind of surprising. You can have a good time in the PB4Y against Japanese aircraft. So this one is still, is the best experience for the PB4Y when it comes to the game. I still think it has inherent issues with its overall stealth. Basically, it has massive blind spots under it, and also it doesn't get up to great speeds, and the bomb load is still unsatisfactory if we compare it to the same to different vehicles of the same BR. Can carry 8,000 pounds, so it can, nuke 2, maybe even 3 bases. Not exactly sure. Need to test that. But for me, what I do, I use it at the start of battles. I dive with it because obviously no bottom coverage. So I dive with it, get close to the ground, get the bombs off, get back to base. That seems to be the best way of doing it because you are able to maintain speed in the dive. The only problem is trying to get back to base, but normally you're at a lower level. Normally Zeros will pounce on you and you're able to 50 cal them to death. So yes, you have to hope that your enemy is a little bit brain dead, but apart from that, you can actually do pretty well in this machine, if the enemy doesn't know how to attack you. You can also be in a situation where, well, a lot of the time you'll be the last one on your team, so, you'll have to defend yourself, and at least if you're low to the ground, you are able to do that effectively. I just really hope that one day people can just work out where to attack this thing. Just shoot the belly. It's not hard to do, and also, if it's close to the ground, wait until it has to turn. It takes a year to turn, and you'll be able to annihilate it on the turn. It's really not hard to do. So overall, with this rank 3, I would say I enjoyed about half of it. I enjoyed the P-47. The B-25, it's turn your brain off and hit things. Mosquito, turn your brain off as well. So these were pretty much neutral. The PB4Y, as I said, was surprising, so I was happy about that compared to my other experiences I've had with the plane. The P1Y one, it's frustrating until you get those 500s, and then it becomes a lot easier, especially in ground. The I-16 I just cannot stand. So overall, positive. Probably closer to the neutral bearing, but at least in rank 4 you get access to some really fun fighters and also some quite nice bombers. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Ambrosius McClellan, B. Young, Blackie, Daniel Stanton, Jay Wilt, John Ryman, Joseph Anders, Martinez, Moxie, Super Cacti, Uyans Terry, Elove Goat, and Seductive Trash Can for supporting the channel.